This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're joined today by Mike Soubirous. He is a member of the Riverside City Council, which for a long time had been known as a very collegial place.
Yes.
We compare to our friends in other cities in the Inland Empire where there was a lot of infighting, but there was a bump in the road a couple years ago, and there was some infighting, and there were allegations lodged against you
Yes.
and Paul Davis, both council members, that somehow you were interfering with the duties of the city manager, his ability to do his job, because you allegedly said that you and the council were not in support of his tenure.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
In a roundabout way, yeah.
In a roundabout way. So an investigation's launched.
Yes.
Give us a sense of what happened during this investigation, and then we'll get to the policy question behind this.
Yeah. Well, what happened, and this was back in 2014, the city manager and the police chief on my case alleged some wrongdoing on my part.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later, the city manager at the time that was here alleged things against Councilman Paul Davis. Similar allegations of basically a violation of our charter.
And in both cases, what they were saying is because you purportedly, and Mr. Davis purportedly expressed that the council did not support their employment anymore, that somehow that was undermining their ability to work in their position, and it's a violation of charter.
In a roundabout way, yes.
Okay, so ultimately, the claims were investigated, and the council chose not to move forward.
Yes.
It was a combination of either the claims cannot be substantiated, and or the council members may have a right under. Did they get to the First Amendment question, or they kind of danced around?
No, they talked about it.
About you have a
Yeah.
right to express your views. Is it?
That's pretty much
Yeah.
it, and things really fell apart for them, and these things basically just evaporated very
Right.
quickly.
And the breaking news is that Mr. Davis recently learned that he would be receiving a $40,000 settlement from
Yes.
the city,
Yes.
which is much more than his legal fees.
Yes.
You have your claim pending. It's got to be tricky. I mean, here it is. It's a city you love. It's a city you
Yes.
serve. You're taking money from their coffers. But in the end, you expended lots of money to defend yourself with what ultimately became baseless.
Baseless, completely
So
baseless.
talk to me about this, the push and pull that you feel.
Yeah, as you know, as somebody that's elected, you certainly don't want to be taking from the taxpayers. But in the case for Councilman Davis, you know, he expressed that without basically, in a sense, slapping them with some form of
Right.
penalty, that they're not going to understand what they did wrong
And who's them?
and the missteps, and that would be the council.
His fellow council members.
Yes.
But not staff? I mean, because isn't this driven by staff, especially when you're dealing with a part-time council, sort of?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you work full-time, essentially, but...
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and that's the interesting thing is staff, in this case, alleged certain things that had happened,
Right.
but it was up to the council ultimately to decide whether or not they want to go forward with it. And they were given information by the then city attorney,
Right.
who's no longer with the city, and he basically, from what I understand from within, told them that they didn't have a choice. I see that it was a lack of doing due diligence.
You think they should have investigated further and determined they did have a choice?
I think they should have asked more questions. For instance, certain things that I was told, I was usually on speed dial with a man named Peter Scheer with the First Amendment Coalition, asking Brown Act type questions.
And the Brown Act is the a law in California which requires
Open meeting.
Open meeting.
Yes, and so there'd be different questions that I would ask outsiders to say, is this fact or is this not fact? And that's things that I do routinely. I mean, you know, I shouldn't have to always doubt what I'm being told by our city attorney, and I think we have a fine city attorney in place.
Right. And the city manager that was the subject of this is no
Yes,
longer with
is
us.
no longer with us. And so I saw things that were not consistent, so I would have questions and concerns, and I would ask outsiders, hey, is this really true or not?
And what you're getting at is, it seems as if that you and Mr. Davis, both new members of the council at the time,
Yes.
were asking questions.
Absolutely.
And one could interpret that your asking questions was seen as trying to mix it up.
Yeah.
And one could interpret that there were forces that didn't want you to mix it up.
Yeah.
And so it turned into kind of a gotcha. Let's see how we can, again, these are just interpretations, you know, allegations, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I would think that the feeling in the community is you had two council members that were wanting to ask questions and challenge the status quo, and basically we rocked the boat, and there's people that did not really appreciate that.
And in the final analysis, though, this is a challenge when you have a city, 300,000 people plus,
Yes.
you're elected with a salary that is $40,000 a year,
Yes.
which can be difficult to live upon. And as a result, there is staff doing
Yes.
a lot of the duties. that some people think the city council does, but they don't. And so it really is kind of endemic in the form of government.
Yes, and if you look at our local governments in some of the smaller cities, you know, it's an extremely part-time council, and these people are not professional council people. And they come on board and they've got you know, it's like drinking out of a fire hose,
literally.
as they call it. And so you have to catch up on a lot of things so that you can be an expert. I think there's a fear on some of them that if they ask questions that are stupid questions or something that somebody may interpret that, well, gee, what's the matter with that guy? Why doesn't he know that? That they're going to look foolish. So there's this, I don't know, this persona out there that you know, these folks rely on staff maybe a little bit too much at times. And if anybody comes in, and I think staff in some cities and in some scenarios, they like to keep the council members not asking questions so they can just do what they do.
And that's the push.
And that's the push. That's the push pull.
And how do you handle a situation like that where, look, I am sure the current city manager, I understand, is well liked and doing a good job, and so you don't want to get in their way.
Right.
But at the same time, if you have concerns, I mean, can you express those concerns without violating the Brown Act, without violating the city charter, without violating, you know, your own First Amendment rights?
Exactly, and that's probably the, like you said, the push-pull or the constant, you know, power struggle, so to speak, between a council and the city manager. I have a great working relationship with our current city manager, John Russo. And if I have a question or concern, we have a mutual respect where he knows that I'm asking questions for the betterment of the people of Riverside. He's got a maturity level that he doesn't take it personally.
And I would hope that the city manager would understand and appreciate, and this is not just for Riverside, but any city, that you're not there to get them.
Right.
You know, you're
the voice of the people.
Right. You're truly the voice of the people.
It's a check and balance.
But what's so remarkable is I'm sure of it, that most people who live in Riverside, a well-educated city, have no idea that there's a role called city manager.
Right.
I mean, the mayor runs the city, but not exactly. The city council runs the city with the mayor, not exactly.
Right.
And so that really begs the question. I mean, should we start looking, I've said this before, not to take away the city manager, but should you start getting a full-time salary so you can, you know, be more active? I mean, look, you have the benefit of being retired and as a result have extraneous income. And I don't know, it's a tough question.
I think, you know, it's up to the council member to be as active as, you know, he or she should be to do the will of the people. And I think that the more that they get involved and the more that they, you know, research the topics and get to know things.
But that's when you're digging.
That's where you're
and
digging.
That's when people start pushing back.
And if people are not used to it in a municipality, that can be a problem.
And I understand one of your counterparts in Murrieta purportedly is facing a similar situation where he was digging and now some people are trying to claim malfeasance on his part.
And the sad part is there are people that are bent on keeping things the way they are, and they will spend public monies and public time to basically do political character assassinations, which is really illegal.
The good news is one could argue that Riverside's on the other side of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems as if that there's now here we are, the 7 members of the council.
We've learned that it's okay to ask questions.
Right, and so, but are we on the other side of this?
Yes, absolutely. We really are.
And the council is getting along?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get along great, and we agree to disagree on some topics. But you know what people are telling me out in the community is they're seeing us, you know, chewing at different topics and you know, and putting in a good debate and you know, looking at different things. And at the end of the day, even though we may vote 7-0 on a topic, they say, we know that you guys have discussed this, and we heard you discuss it, and we know that you have dug in and looked at the issues.
His name is Mike Soubirous. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. If you want to watch future or additional episodes of Charter Local Edition, please go to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm so glad you're with us from the Inland Empire. This is Charter Local Edition.